In the wake of the controversial testimony from Ivy League presidents on anti-Semitism, two board of trustees at UPenn have also stepped down from their roles. And with calls for resignation growing across college campuses, many professors are struggling to find out how to teach their students about Jewish and Israeli studies. Yael Aronoff joins us now. She's the director of the Michael and Elaine Serling Institute for Jewish Studies and Modern Israel at James Madison College at Michigan State University. Thank you for being with us. Before we talk about how we have these conversations, tough ones in class, and teach about what is happening right now, your reaction to the testimony as we all watch these three professors talk about what's happening on their campuses. How did you receive their words?
I think that they were very concerned about the legal advice they probably all received, which on one hand is understandable. On the other hand, it was disappointing that they couldn't merely say that calls for genocide to any group is worthy of real condemnation and is abhorrent. And then they could go on to say, you know, depending on the words used, if those words aren't used in other words, would it, you know, violate a code of conduct? Certainly one concern is that in one, it should be followed consistently for all minority groups, these code of conducts on universities. So one question is whether they are or are not consistently followed. And then you would have to look at context when you get to any kinds of punishment of any kind. That would be important. But they certainly should have clearly stated how abhorrent, if someone actually called for genocide of Jews would be. And then you get into other kinds of questions, into particular language of River to the Sea or Intifada, where there may be some who don't know the history of some of these words in the past and don't realize the effect it has on many Jews on campus and have different intents, perhaps. But a lot of education also needs to happen about anti-Semitism on campuses, and people not understanding that during the Second Intifada, civilians were targeted in weekly and sometimes daily suicide bombings within the 67 border, in restaurants and buses and so forth, in which 1,000 Israeli civilians died, which would be approximately, in terms of population, like 40,000 Americans dying. So when a lot of Jews hear Intifada, they think of those tactics during the Second Intifada. And of course, on October 7th, more civilians were targeted, more people were murdered on October 7th by Hamas than in the entire 5 years of the Second Intifada. So that's the context under which people are hearing it, which is problematic. So you can't assume intent on all parts of people, but when you're striving for an inclusive campus, you certainly need to be educating about the effects of language as well, and how painful that is to some students. I'm sorry to say that there are very few universities across the United States that provide education on anti-Semitism to incoming students, faculty, and staff and administrators. They also don't provide it on Islamophobia. And so I think that there's a real need for greater education on campuses about anti-Semitism. A lot of people are very ignorant of its history, of its tropes, and so forth. And in terms of I think that there is a need, given what's happening, to really have education about the complexity of Israel as you would study in an academic fashion any country in the world. Many universities still don't have classes on Israel that are taught in that kind of way as you would teach other countries in the world. And so there's a necessity for that. And in terms of Israel-Palestine, there's also a necessity inside and outside the classroom to not put students in a position where they either have to be pro-Israel or pro-Palestine or pro-peace, but rather provide a framework that you can be empathetic and compassionate to Israeli civilians. You can be empathetic and compassionate to Palestinian civilians. You can support self-determination for both peoples in an eventual two-state solution of an Israel standing alongside Palestine and so forth. And if you change that framework, there's a lot more room for understanding, and there's less chance of a party being demonized and then it turning into anti-Semitism or Islamophobia. So
thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.